Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Here are tonight's top stories.
British fan warns of ulterior motive behind Western offers of help with democracy.
Microbiologist slams health officials for lax response to superbug outbreak.
Hundreds of parents queue up overnight for a handful of kindergarten spaces. Hong Kong people are naive if they believe Western powers genuinely want to help the city with its political reforms, according to NPC delegate Rita Fan.
The veteran politician urged Hong Kongers to depend on themselves to achieve universal suffrage, implying that the US and Britain have a hidden agenda to stir up trouble in China. Emily Sue reports.
Veteran politician and NPC delegate Rita Fan warned Hong Kongers today that they can only count on themselves when it comes to universal suffrage.
Do not rely on foreign power to get what we wanted, because if they can give us that, they can take it away at will.
Fan's strongly worded statement came after officials from both the US and Britain said their governments are willing to help Hong Kong with its political reforms. First, it was British Foreign Office Minister of State Hugo Swire, who wrote in local newspapers saying that it's important for Hong Kong's public to have a genuine choice when it comes to electing their leader. Then it was US Consul General Clifford Hart, who suggested the pan-Democrats should be allowed to run for chief executive and vowed to keep speaking out for greater democracy. While Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and his number 2 Carrie Lam have politely declined any offer of foreign help, Beijing went a step further, accusing Western powers of meddling with local political affairs. Fan is just as skeptical about the motives behind the recent comments, hinting that the US and Britain have a hidden agenda.
I don't think we should use or believe that foreign powers really wanted to assist Hong Kong. If you believe that, either you're naive or even worse. It is, I feel it is quite possible that they simply wanted to create more problems for China. And maybe they think that giving support to the Hong Kong pro-democratic groups will cause more problem for China.
Fan is implying that local pro-democracy groups or activists are getting support from foreign governments. For years, the US State Department trained and funded the activities that eventually led to protests that overthrew governments in the so-called Arab Spring. Fan also said comments like Swire's do nothing to help Hong Kong's constitutional reform.
It actually unnecessarily cast doubt on the whole situation. But I'm pretty sure that, at least I think, that our pro-democratic friends are not as innocent as to believe it.
Fan added that January should be a good time for the government to start consulting the public on political reform, because Leung will also deliver his policy address. Emily Sue, ATV News.
A microbiologist has accused the hospital authority of failing to act promptly to contain an outbreak of a drug-resistant bacteria.
But Health Chief Ko Wing-man has dismissed the allegations, and so far the number of infections found are lower than expected. The new vancomycin-resistant enterococcus, or VRE, is a bacteria that is resistant to vancomycin, a strong antibiotic. The bug can exist in the body without patients even knowing about it in most cases. It is also known to cause death if it infects the brain or enters an open wound. In the first 9 months of this year, more than 1,180 VRE cases were reported. Hong Kong University microbiologist Ho Pak Leung claims he warned the hospital authorities several times after more than 100 VRE cases were discovered in March, but did not get a response. Ho accuses the authority of failing to contain the outbreak of the bacteria and also blames the management of the hospital clusters for its lax handling of the outbreak.
I think the challenge that we are facing from this vancomycin-resistant superbug is tremendous. Within a short period of time, more than 1,000 inpatients has been affected. So I think it's time to rethink what we should learn from this unprecedented outbreak of vancomycin-resistant enterococcus.
But Health Minister Ko Ing-man has dismissed the allegations and insisted today that the hospital authority did not try to cover up the issue. Ko hopes people can give more time and room for the authority to conduct its huge screening process for the bacteria on hospital inpatients, a big move which has been taken after consulting health experts. He added that in half of over 600 samples taken, around a dozen tested positive for the bacteria, a figure which is lower than he had expected. Ko said precautionary measures have also been stepped up in other public hospitals and health facilities against the bacteria. On Monday, huge screening procedures were taken at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, with all inpatients having to undergo tests for the bug after the hospital detected an unusually high number of infections this year. Since the start of 2013, Queen Elizabeth Hospital has reported around 450 cases of the deadly drug-resistant superbug.
Long queues continue to form outside kindergartens in North District, with some parents lining up overnight to get application forms.
Education Chief Edna insisted the situation has improved since some schools put the forms online, but teachers at a kindergarten in Shangshou disagree. Emily Sue reports.
Hundreds of parents and their toddlers have been lining up outside Waichao Kindergarten in Shangshou for days, hoping to get a spot for the next school year. More than 1,000 application forms were handed out this morning, but an interview is not guaranteed for all applicants, and there are only enough spaces for 90 students. In the end, only 50 to 60 students will get a place because those with siblings already at the school will be prioritized, said this parent. The kindergarten handed out 500 ticket numbers last night, so parents at the front of the line could go home. Those who didn't get a number had to stay overnight. Queues have been forming outside several North District kindergartens since the start of National Day Golden Week. But Education Chief Edna urged parents to keep calm, insisting there are plenty of school spaces to meet the demand. He says 17 of the 30 kindergartens in North District have online application forms, and he's been told this helped ease the queues significantly. But that wasn't the case in Waichao Kindergarten. Principal Wang Shuchun said parents have been able to download application forms for 2 to 3 years. But this has only pushed the number of applicants to infinity, Wang said, and her teachers simply can't handle all the paperwork involved. Also, even though they don't have to queue up to get the form, they still have to come and hand it in. Meanwhile, members of the Democratic Party protested outside the kindergarten, demanding the government prioritize locals over cross-border students. They accused Ng of not doing enough to ensure the rights of local parents and children. Emily Sue, ATV News.
Overseas, free trade talks between the US and Europe have been postponed because of the continuing partial government shutdown in America.
Washington headed into day 5 of the shutdown with no end in sight.
Not only does the US Congress need to agree on a resolution to the partial government shutdown, it's also facing a deadline that, if breached, the Treasury Department calls catastrophic. They need to find a way to raise the nation's $16.7 trillion debt ceiling. That's the cap on the total amount Washington can borrow, which is set by lawmakers. Congress must act by the 17th of October to avoid the country defaulting on its debts for the very first time. With that deadline looming and the shutdown entering its 5th day today, Senate Democrats and House Republicans continued to play the blame game.
And that's the problem we have here, Madam President. They're against everything, against everything. And as the distinguished senator from Vermont said, What are they for? We know what they're against, but what are they for?
I was at the White House the other night and listened to the president some 20 times explain to me why he wasn't going to negotiate. And then this morning, I get the Wall Street Journal out, and it says, well, we don't care how long this lasts because we're winning. Now, this isn't some damn game. The American people don't want their government shut down, and neither do I.
When it comes to negotiations, I've said I am happy to have negotiations with the Republicans and Speaker Boehner on a whole range of issues. But we can't do it with a gun held to the head of the American people.
Obama even staged this photo op, a rare stroll with Vice President Joe Biden outside the White House to a nearby sandwich shop, as damage control.
We can end this shutdown. A whole bunch of families, not just here in Washington, but all across the country, will have the certainty that a paycheck will be coming, that they'll be able to make their mortgage, that they'll be able to pay their expenses, that they'll be able to look after their families.
Obama is refusing to negotiate with the Republicans over budget issues until they pass a temporary bill to reopen the government and agree to raise the borrowing limit. But the Republicans, particularly its Tea Party faction, are demanding the White House enter into talks on their goal to defund health reform law Obamacare, which the president refuses to do.
It is categorically our position that the government should be reopened today, now, in a half an hour. Right now, John Boehner and the Tea Party, that seems to have his ear, principally, have made the decision that they won't open the government unless they can get whatever demand it is they can think of today.
Around 60% of the government is still functioning, but hundreds of thousands of federal workers are on unpaid leave.
Do your job! Do your job!
Hundreds of them protested outside Capitol Hill demanding an end to the lockout.
I speak for my colleagues when I say we need to get back to work. We have very important work that needs to be done.
I'm very angry and disgusted right now that our family is being held hostage by their political whims.
They should give up their paychecks. You know, they should reserve the right to get a paycheck, to know what it feels like to not have the money to provide for your family, to be able to put food on the table, to be able to put gas in your car.
Congress people can be hardworking and they're dedicated. Unfortunately, there are some extreme elements up here on the Hill that are, I think, sabotaging the system.
Obama claims he's been forced to cancel plans to fly to Asia for a pair of diplomatic summits because of the shutdown. Although his top diplomat, John Kerry, has managed to make it to today's APEC meeting in Bali. Obama has also had to cancel negotiations on a major US-European trade pact next week in Brussels, citing financial and staffing difficulties related to the shutdown.
Still to come on ATV's main news, John Kerry struggles to convince APEC leaders the US is okay despite shutdown.
US takes slim lead in rain-suspended second round of the President's Cup.